Yuki was 53 years old when she realized she had been living someone else's life. Not a bad life, a perfectly acceptable life. A steady job at an insurance company in Nagoya, a tidy apartment, weekends at the market, everything in order. But every morning, her alarm would go off at 6:30, and before she even opened her eyes, a quiet dread would settle in her chest. Not panic, not sadness, just a flat, gray feeling she could not name. She went to a doctor. He said she was fine. She went to a counselor. He said she was stressed. She booked a vacation. She came home, and the gray feeling was still there, waiting. Then one afternoon, while visiting her grandmother in Okinawa, she sat on the porch watching the old woman tend her garden. Her grandmother was 81. She moved slowly, but she moved with purpose. She hummed while she worked. She smiled at weeds. Yuki asked her, "Oba-chan, are you ever bored? Are you ever lost?" Her grandmother looked up and said simply, "I know my Ikigai." Yuki had heard the word before. Most Japanese people have. But she had never stopped to ask what it actually meant for her. And maybe you have heard it too. Maybe you have seen the diagram online, the Venn circles, the neat overlapping sections. Maybe it looked interesting for about 30 seconds, and then you clicked away. Because honestly, the word gets thrown around a lot. Motivation posters, self-help headlines, LinkedIn posts. But here's what those posters never tell you. Ikigai is not a career plan. It is not a passion project. It is not something you find by filling in a diagram. It is something much quieter and much more useful than that. The word Ikigai comes from two Japanese words, iki, meaning life, kai, meaning worth, value, or result. Together, it means roughly the thing that makes your life feel worth living. Not your purpose with a capital P, not your legacy, not your dream career, just the reason you are genuinely glad to be awake. For Yuki's grandmother, it was her garden and her grandchildren. For a retired fisherman in a small Okinawan village, it might be the early morning boat and the smell of the sea. For a teacher, it might be the moment a child finally understands something difficult. Ikigai does not have to be grand. In Japan, it almost never is. Researchers who studied elderly people in Okinawa, one of the longest living populations on Earth, found that those with a clear Ikigai lived longer, reported less stress, and were far less likely to experience depression, not because they had perfect lives, but because they had a reason to show up for the one they had. Here's the part that matters most. In Japan, Ikigai is not found. It is practiced every single day. There is a framework often used to help people get closer to their Ikigai. It asks 4 simple questions, and the power is not in answering them perfectly. The power is in sitting with them honestly. Question 1. What do you love? Not what you think you should love, not what looks impressive. What actually makes time disappear for you? What do you do and then look up and wonder where the afternoon went? For Yuki, the honest answer surprised her. She loved explaining things, simplifying complicated ideas, making people go, "Oh, now I get it." She had been doing this informally her whole life, for colleagues, for neighbors, for anyone who was confused, and never once counted it as anything meaningful. Question 2. What are you good at? Again, be honest, not modest. What do people consistently come to you for? What feels effortless to you that seems hard to others? Yuki was good at breaking things down, at finding the clearest possible way to say something complicated. Question 3. What does the world need? This is a big question. You can start small. Your neighborhood, your community, your workplace. What is missing? What problem exists that you actually care about solving? Question 4. What can you be paid for? This is not about being greedy. It is about sustainability. A life built on something you cannot sustain is not a full life. It is just a phase. Where all 4 answers begin to overlap, that soft center where love, skill, contribution, and sustainability meet, that is where your Ikigai lives. Yuki spent 3 weekends answering those 4 questions. Not quickly, not with a goal in mind, just honestly. What she found was not a dramatic revelation. It was more like recognizing something she had always half known. She loved teaching. She was good at simplifying. The world needed better financial literacy, something she saw daily in her insurance work, and people would absolutely pay for clear, accessible financial education. Within a year, she had started a small weekend class for young women in her neighborhood who had no idea how to manage money. She was not earning much from it. She still worked her insurance job. But here's what changed. Her alarm went off at 6:30, and she opened her eyes without dread. She had something to move toward, small, specific, and entirely hers. That gray feeling? Gone. So, here's how you actually start practicing Ikigai, not thinking about it, practicing it. Action 1. Write your 4 answers this week. Set a timer for 15 minutes. No phone, sit with each question and write whatever comes honestly, even if it seems small or strange, especially if it seems small or strange. Nobody is reading this except you. Action 2. Find your tiny Ikigai first. Your Ikigai does not need to be your career. It can be a morning ritual, a creative project, a relationship, a skill you are developing. Start with something that already exists in your life that gives you a quiet feeling of rightness. Water that thing first. Action 3. Remove one obligation that is pure drain. Ikigai is as much about subtraction as addition. Most people cannot find their reason to wake up because they have filled every hour with things they do out of obligation alone. Look at your week. Find one thing you do that gives you nothing back. Begin the process of removing it or reducing it. Action 4. Ask the people closest to you what they notice. Sometimes the people around you can see your Ikigai before you can. Ask a close friend or family member, when do you see me most alive? Their answer might point you somewhere you've been looking past. Yuki's grandmother lived to 94. She gardened until she was 89. She sat with her grandchildren until the end. On the last morning, she was fully herself. She woke before dawn and watched the sun come up over the water. When Yuki's mother asked her how she was feeling, she said, full. Not happy, not grateful, full. That is what Ikigai feels like when you have lived close to it for a long time. Not a burning fire of passion, just a steady, quiet fullness, the sense that your days are actually yours, that you are building something, even if slowly, that matters to you. Yuki eventually understood what her grandmother meant, not because she found a perfect answer, but because she stopped waiting for one and started paying attention to the small moments where she already felt alive. That is the part most explanations of Ikigai leave out. It is already present in your life, in fragments. The conversations that energize you, the tasks you finish and feel genuinely good about, the mornings you did not dread. You are not starting from zero. You are learning to read what was already there. You do not need to quit your job or move to Okinawa. You do not need to have it all figured out by the end of this video. What you need is to take the questions seriously. Most people never do. They read about Ikigai, nod along, and go back to whatever was filling their calendar before. Nothing changes because nothing was actually tried. But you are still here, which means some part of you already suspects there is something more specific, more yours, waiting just beneath the surface of your current routine. You just need one small, honest reason to open your eyes in the morning. Start there. The rest grows from that. This week, your only task is this. Write down your 4 answers. What you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, what you can sustain. Do not overthink them. Do not edit them. Just write. Then look at where they overlap, even a small overlap, even a hint of one. That is your starting point. If this video gave you something to think about, please subscribe, because every week on this channel, we go deeper into the Japanese frameworks, habits, and ideas that help ordinary people build lives that actually feel like theirs. Drop your biggest answer in the comments below. I want to know, what is the one thing in your life that makes time disappear? Tell me. I read every single one. The next video on this channel is about Kaizen, how tiny daily improvements compound into transformation. It's linked right here. Watch that next. See you there.